Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. In this video we'll be discussing the very famous professional fighter and mixed martial artist in Israel Adesanya. This is Rob from UpNext MMA and we're going to be discussing 5 crazy things you did not know about Israel Adesanya. So we're just going to get straight into it. Most of you know who Israel Adesanya is. He's the reigning UFC middleweight champion and ranked pound for pound fighter in the world right now. I think he's like top 5, top 6, somewhere around that. But in today's video, we'll be discussing 5 things, crazy things you probably didn't know about him. So let's get straight into it. Number 1, Israel and his upbringing. Israel was born in Lagos, Nigeria on July 22nd, 1989, to a family of 5 children. His father, Femi, was an accountant, and his mother, Taiwu, I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, she was a nurse. You know, Israel grew up as a kid in Nigeria and experienced as well as saw levels of extreme poverty that he still relates to till this day. His family was lucky enough to be able to move out of there to New Zealand though when he was, I think, a little older, and he attended high school there as well. He wasn't really interested in any other sports. He really got into like anime actually, and didn't really start practicing sports until he actually got into MMA. That actually leads us to our second crazy thing about Israel Adesanya, is his inspiration to start training in combat sports. It was actually a movie called Ong Bak. Now, Ong Bak is a classic martial arts movie that came out, I think it was 2003 in Asia, but didn't really hit the States until I think the late 2000s. Anyway, it stars Tony Jaa. Tony Jaa is a famous action star. People on this side of the world don't really know him, but he's super popular in Southeast Asia. He is mainly popular for his athleticism as well as his Muay Thai kickboxing practices, which he displays in his movies. And if you haven't watched that movie, by the way, it's amazing. You should go and watch it. He displays Muay Thai very well in the movie as well as Thai culture as a whole. But that was Israel's inspiration to start kickboxing. And when he was 18, he started training in kickboxing as well as started fighting amateur kickboxing. When he was 21, he actually moved to Auckland, New Zealand to begin training under Eugene Berman at City Kickboxing, where he still trains now. And that's where he met other fighters such as Dan Hooker and current UFC featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski, my bad. Number 3, Israel and his insanely quick path to UFC gold, which, FYI, was only 14 months. Israel signed with the UFC in December of 2017 and debuted in February of 2018 against Robert Wilkinson, where he won the fight by TKO in the second round. Now, keep in mind, Israel, I think, was 28 when he signed with the UFC, but he had been fighting in kickboxing for 8 or 9 years before that and had over 100 kickboxing fights between his amateur and pro kickboxing careers. But he came into the UFC and many already saw him as a seasoned fighter, and keep in mind, he had MMA fights before that as well. So he was undefeated in MMA coming into the UFC, just FYI. So many already saw him as a seasoned fighter. So it was no surprise when he knocked out Robert Wilkinson in the second round of his debut. He went on to win that fight, and the UFC vaulted him to pretty much more experienced competition. He went on to beat Martin Vettori. He then beat Brad Tavares in a convincing decision. Then he knocked out Derek Brunson. I mean, that was a statement win. I mean, he kneed him right in the face and finished him. Then went on to win a convincing decision against pound for pound great Anderson Silva. And he won that fight in February of 2019. So from February of 2018 to February of 2019, Israel fought 5 times. He went from debut to fighting a pretty much no-name Rob Wilkinson to beating pound-for-pound great Anderson Silva. After that fight, the UFC brass was convinced that Israel was ready to fight for a title. So 2 months after he beats Anderson Silva, he is fighting the #1 contender in Kelvin Gastelum for the interim UFC championship. Now, that fight was a very close fight, in my opinion, if not the best middleweight title fight ever. It's up there in like the top 3. It was a great fight, and Israel won a very, very close decision and ended up winning the UFC interim middleweight championship. So from February of 2018 to April of 2019, 14 months, Israel is now a champion in the UFC, from debut to champion. Obviously, he went on after that to win the undisputed title against Robert Whittaker in October of 2019, and then defended the title in March of 2020 against Yoel Romero. That fight wasn't that great, but it is what it is. As of August of 2020, which is the timing of this recording, he's still a top 5, top 6 pound-for-pound fighter. So he's gained a lot of popularity and a lot of notoriety within the UFC. Number 4. As we discussed earlier, Israel was born in Nigeria, right? Well, he also has a tattoo of Africa on his chest with Nigeria outlined in the middle. This really shows like he's proud of his roots, which I completely understand. My family is also immigrants from Nigeria, so I completely understand where he's coming from. He has the inscription "Broken Native" written across his chest, and broken native pretty much means someone who had to leave their home in pursuit of something bigger that their homeland or their native land cannot offer, which explains Israel and his family's journey in a nutshell. It's pretty cool, and I can relate to that obviously because my family did the exact same thing. Aside from the African tattoo on his chest, he also has one of The Last Airbender, which, if you don't know, that's from an anime cartoon called Naruto. I think that's on his forearm too. I forget which one, but this was the result of his passion for anime, obviously. He says he wants to actually start an anime production company after he's retired from fighting, which I think would be pretty cool if he has enough money laying around to do that. His nickname, The Last Stylebender, is derived from that show, The Last Airbender, Naruto. I think the movie was called The Last Airbender. But Israel liked to call himself, The Last Airbender, basically as an avatar for how smooth he moves as well as how devastating his combat can be. Very similar to the TV show. Alright, on number 5. One of the things when I'm always interested in money, and I always like looking up what these fighters are making. If you look up Israel, he actually has gotten paid pretty well from the start of his UFC career. And at least compared to a lot of other fighters who, first enter the company, the minimum they pay is 10 to show and 10 to win. So if you're talking about like coming in to the UFC, you're not making much money. But Israel had an extensive kickboxing career before ever coming into MMA. And on top of that, he also had several fights before the UFC, and he was undefeated. So he was able to negotiate a way higher wage. So his first fight, he actually made $50K to show and $50K to win for his first fight. So you think about that, he made $100,000 for his first fight and then won a performance award on top of that and got his Reebok sponsorship bonus. It's pretty good considering, once again, they're fighters who debut, they're making 10 and 10. So his pay gradually went up by $3K on each side, to win and, to show $3K on each side. And his pay gradually went up and up and up. He eventually, when he fought for the title, his pay vaulted up to, I think, $400,000. I think is what he got to fight Kelvin Gastelum. It was either $350,000 or $400,000, something like that. But that money on top of the bonuses, Israel has accumulated a good amount of money during his UFC career on the come up that most other fighters don't get. I think the only other fighter that's even comparable is Conor McGregor, and that's because Conor just outgrossed everybody in terms of sales. You know, he's still the number one in terms of how much money he made on the come up and makes right now. But Israel, like, it's pretty good. No one exactly knows what his net worth is, but he earns a large sum of money from his UFC pay-per-view fights. His disclosed purse is 500 grand, and that's not accounting for his pay-per-view revenue that he gets a share of, sponsorships, and any other discretionary bonuses. So Israel's getting paid, man. I'm proud of him. I always love to see UFC fighters getting paid, man. Anyway, guys, that's all for today's video. Are there any crazy things about Israel that I left out? Anything interesting that you guys want to point out? Or anything about Israel that, I didn't mention that you guys think is pretty cool? Also, do you guys think Israel is going to knock out Paulo Costa? Let me know what you think in the comments. I love discussing, fights with you guys, as well as all things MMA. So tell me what you think in the comments. And if you like this video, please smash the like button, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell. The notification bell will let you know whenever we have a new video coming, and you can always stay on top of everything coming with our channel, because the notification bell allows you to stay updated. Alright guys, thank you for watching the whole thing, and I'll see you next time. Bye.